He would suddenly remember that he was the father of the family, make peace with his wife, weep sincerely. He respected Nina Alexandrovna to the point of adoration for having silently forgiven him so much and loved him even in his clownishness and humiliation. But his magnanimous struggle with disorder usually did not last long. The general was also all too impulsive a man, though in his own way. He usually could not bear a repentant and idle life in his family and ended by rebelling. He would fall into a fit of passion, perhaps reproaching himself for it at the same moment, but unable to control himself. He would quarrel, begin talking floridly and grandiloquently, demand a disproportionate and impossible respect for himself, and in the end disappear from the house, sometimes even for a long time. For the last 2 years, he had known about the affairs of his family only in general or by hearsay. He had stopped going into more detail, feeling not the slightest call for it. But this time something unusual manifested itself in the commotion with the general. Everyone seemed to know about something and everyone seemed afraid to speak about something. The general had formally appeared in the family, that is, to Nina Alexandrovna, only 3 days ago, but somehow not humbly and not with repentance, as had always happened in his previous appearances, but on the contrary, with extraordinary irritability. He was garrulous, agitated, talked heatedly with everyone he met, as if falling upon the person, but it was all about such diverse and unexpected subjects that it was in no way possible to get at what, in essence, he was now so worried about. At moments he was merry, but more often brooding, though he himself did not know about what. He would suddenly begin talking about something, the Epanchins, or the Prince and Lebedev, and would suddenly break off and stop talking altogether, and respond to further questions only with a dull smile, though without even noticing that he had been asked something and had merely smiled. He had spent the last night moaning and groaning, and had worn out Nina Alexandrovna, who for some reason kept heating poultices for him all night. Towards morning he had suddenly fallen asleep, slept for 4 hours, and woke up in a most violent and disorderly fit of hypochondria, which had ended in a quarrel with Hippolyte and the curse upon this house. It had also been noticed that during those 3 days he was constantly having the most violent fits of ambition, and consequently of extraordinary touchiness. But Kolya insisted, reassuring his mother, that it was all the longing for a drink, and perhaps also for Lebedev, with whom the general had become extraordinarily friendly in recent days. But 3 days ago he had suddenly quarreled with Lebedev and parted from him in a terrible rage. There had even been some sort of scene with the prince. Kolya had asked the prince for an explanation, and had finally begun to suspect that he, too, had something that he was apparently unwilling to tell him. If, as Ganya quite plausibly supposed, there had been some special conversation between Ippolit and Nina Alexandrovna, then it was odd that this wicked gentleman, whom Ganya so directly called a gossip, had denied himself the pleasure of enlightening Kolya in the same way. It may well be that he was not such a wicked little brat, as Ganya had described him, talking with his sister, but was wicked in some other way, and he had hardly informed Nina Alexandrovna of some observation of his solely in order to break her heart. Let us not forget that the reasons for human actions are usually incalculably more complex and diverse than we tend to explain them later, and are seldom clearly manifest. Sometimes it is best for the narrator to limit himself to a simple account of events. So we shall do in our further clarification of the present catastrophe with the general, for, in spite of all our efforts, we find ourselves in the decided necessity of giving a bit more attention and space to this secondary character of our story than we had hitherto intended. The events followed one another in this order. When Lebedev, after his journey to Petersburg in search of Ferdishchenko, returned that same day, together with the general, he did not tell the prince anything in particular. If at that time the prince had not been so distracted and taken up with other impressions important for him, he might soon have noticed that for the following 2 days Lebedev not only did not offer him any explanations but even, on the contrary, seemed to avoid meeting him. Paying attention to that at last, the prince wondered why, during those 2 days, when he had chanced to meet Lebedev, he remembered him not otherwise than in the most radiant spirits, and almost always together with the general. The two friends never parted for a moment now. Occasionally the prince heard loud and rapid conversation, guffawing, merry argument, coming to him from upstairs, once even, very late in the evening, suddenly and unexpectedly, the sounds of a military Bacchic song reached him, and he immediately recognized the general's horse bass. But the resounding song did not come off and suddenly died out. Then, for about an hour more, a very animated and, by all tokens, drunken conversation went on. One could guess that the merry-making friends upstairs kept embracing, and one of them finally wept. Then suddenly a violent quarrel ensued, which also died out quickly and soon. All this while Kolya was in a somehow especially preoccupied mood. The prince was most often away from home and sometimes came back very late. He was always told that Kolya had been looking for him and asking after him all day long. But when they met, Kolya could not say anything special, except that he was decidedly displeased with the general and his present behavior. They drag themselves around, drink in the local tavern, embrace each other, quarrel in the streets, egg each other on, and simply cannot part. When the prince observed to him that earlier as well it had been the same almost every day, Kolya decidedly did not know what to answer to that and how to explain precisely what caused his present anxiety. The morning after the Bacchic song and quarrel, when the prince was leaving the house at around 11 o'clock, the general suddenly appeared before him, extremely agitated by something, almost shaken. I have long been seeking the honor and occasion of meeting you, my much esteemed Lev Nikolaevich, long, very long, he murmured, pressing the prince's hand extremely hard, almost painfully, very, very long. The prince invited him to sit down. No, I won't sit down, and moreover I'm keeping you, I will, some other time. It seems I may take this opportunity to congratulate you on the fulfillment of your heart's desires. What heart's desires? The prince was embarrassed. Like a great many people in his position, he thought that decidedly no one saw anything, guessed anything, understood anything. Don't worry, don't worry. I won't upset your most delicate feelings. I have experienced and know myself how it is when a stranger's nose, so to speak, according to the saying, goes poking where it hasn't been invited. I experience it every morning. I have come on a different matter, Prince, an important one. A very important matter, Prince. The prince once again invited him to sit down and sat down himself. Perhaps for 1 second, I've come for advice. I, of course, live without any practical goals, but, having respect for myself and, for efficiency, which is so lacking in the Russian man, generally speaking, I wish to put myself, my wife, and my children in a position. In short, Prince, I am looking for advice. The prince warmly praised his intention. Well, that's all nonsense, the general quickly interrupted. Moreover, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something different, and important. And I shall venture to explain it precisely to you, Lev Nikolaevich, as a man the sincerity of whose reception and the nobility of whose feelings I trust as, you're not surprised at my words, Prince? The prince was following his visitor with great attention and curiosity, if not with any particular surprise. The old man was slightly pale, his lips occasionally twitched a little, his hands seemed unable to find a place to rest. He had been sitting for only a few minutes, and had twice managed to get up suddenly from his chair for some reason and suddenly to sit down again, obviously not paying the least attention to his maneuvers. Some books were lying on the table. He took one, went on talking, opened it and peeked at a page, closed it again at once and put it on the table, snatched another book, which he did not open now, but spent the rest of the time holding in his right hand, constantly brandishing it in the air. Enough! He cried suddenly. I see I've greatly inconvenienced you. Why, not in the least, good heavens, you're quite welcome. On the contrary, I've been listening and wish I could guess. Prince, I wish to put myself in a respectable position. I wish to respect myself and my rights.